Ever since I started self improvement, I've always kind of been looked at as in a negative way by most people. And it was mostly because people were jealous because they actually saw me trying to improve myself. And it got to a lot of people's heads that, seeing someone their age and who was that devoted to their self improvement. I started the YouTube back in 2023. I was reading books in school and I was journaling in class. I was always kind of the outlier kid. And that always kind of felt normal to me. But it was not really something that people sort of took in well. Everyone in my environment was weirded out by it. The people who were the closest to me at that time, which were just a bunch of toxic friends, were sort of really upset by the change because suddenly I didn't want to go out as much and I wanted to focus on pursuing my own dreams. And eventually it led to me sort of leaving them because, things just got out of hand. They were bullying me at that point, trying to do everything in their power to try and return the old version of me, the version which I chose to basically leave behind. And ever since that time, I've basically continuously had to deal with people trying to put me back in whatever bucket they met me in. If it was the 2024 people, now in 2025 trying to bring back 2024 me, or now in 2026 trying to bring back the 2025 me. It's always people trying to pull me back into the person that they were more familiar with. And the reality is, they don't really like the new version of me. Most people don't. Obviously, the people who resonate with me and my messaging, the main core things that I stand for, are going to continuously follow me, and they have, which is you guys. But the vast majority of people, the average normies who don't really have that much intelligence and who don't actually want to prove themselves, will really take it upon themselves to basically try and pull anyone who starts self-improvement. And whether that be that you started to dopamine detox and get away from all this bright, sort of degenerate stuff, or it's like level 2 self-improvement, trying to really, looks max or do certain different things, hitting the gym, all that kind of stuff, trying to live more authentically. And in truth, have been trying to maximize all my levels of self-improvement. And with that, I got a lot of different criticism, whether that be from people really close to me, my own parents, friends. It was everyone. And the truth is, anyone in my position would have just bent to their will. Like, with that amount of pressure put on a human being, you will crumble, right? The difference is, I've always had this carelessness about people's feelings. And because, although I'm very empathetic, but I also don't really care about people when it ends up actually concerning myself, because I know what's good for me. I know what's the actual best for myself. Because those same people saw me doing degenerate shit and they didn't say a word. I know what's right for me. And that's the main thing. When you get on self-improvement and when you start to intelligently play around with these areas of your life to try and improve yourself, to maximize the version of basically becoming the best version of yourself, right? People will try to stop you and they will hate you. You will feel like you are hated, even when they tell you that, they don't mind you so much, but it's just, whatever. And the reality is, recently at least, I've sort of been playing around with this idea of living authentically and everything. And I've made a couple of, reels on the subject. Essentially, like, living authentically is just living as if social norms didn't exist and just doing whatever the fuck you want. And especially in the last week, I've probably like really maximized my sort of authentic. And in doing so, I managed to get the maximum amount of criticism from people. I got criticism from basically everyone around me. And it was particularly sort of, going to the maximum extremes of really taking, like putting on kuhul and doing all this kind of stuff. This like sort of eyeliner kind of thing. And it's obviously upset a lot of people that I know very close, which is why I sort of, especially particularly parents who have really sort of taken it upon themselves, because obviously I'm in a very conservative society. They don't really value that kind of stuff. So at some point, I will definitely go back to being or trying to live the most authentically. The truth is, I've actually read this chapter before in The Way of the Superior Man. And the chapter was called Live as If Your Father Were Dead. And essentially the chapter is saying how a man can't truly live authentically and be 100% in his, full pursuit of purpose and of mission unless his father is dead. And, he says, obviously you don't obviously wish for your father to be dead, but it is an interesting sort of idea because it is true. A man goes through a different phase of growth when his father is no longer around. He no longer bows to people. He doesn't really, there's no longer anyone who he needs to bow to or to submit to because his father's dead. And the same idea was sort of something that I tried to do, but I ignored the fact that my father was alive. And with that came some, interesting consequences, let's just say. So obviously I'm sort of diving deep into my own sort of story, but essentially, living authentically and trying to pursue anything in your self-improvement journey will offend people. And the vast majority of the time, you should not budge. In fact, I would say 99.9% of the time, you should not budge. Now, things can get dire for certain topics. And you probably know the kind of topics I'm talking about. The topics that really concern parents, the type of stuff that will really sort of change your life going forward. And thankfully for me, like leaving school and taking steroids and all these big decisions that I've wanted to do for so long, they were pretty easy decisions. When I sort of talked them out with my parents, I actually convinced them and they were pretty fine with them. It was only really when I sort of went down, sort of opposing this very conservative kind of view of the world that really sort of triggered everyone. So there are certain things that will trigger people around you. And at some point, there are people that you don't want to lose, right? There are some people that have to stay in your life. Even if it's for a temporary time, you have to sort of try and limit yourself from pursuing some areas of self-improvement. Now, obviously, if it's fitness and, someone's being a dick, you totally fucking just step on them and you freaking do whatever the fuck you want. If it's fucking meditation that someone's complaining about, this isn't even something that you argue about. You just fucking do it. But when you get onto the deeper self-improvement stuff, making the big decisions, taking a direction in life, these are the kinds of things that people will start to really sort of hit and criticize a lot. So that's sort of the main verdict. Don't really, in most areas of self-improvement, you should really not budge. That's really what masculinity is all about, being stoic in the things that you value, actually holding to them and standing for them and not willing to change them. And by all means, even for the things that you are sort of forced by society to comply with, you still do not change your opinions on them. Because you understand, unless you obviously were wrong, then you just change your opinion because you've learned. Learning is very different from simply knowing something is true and having looked it all the way through, right? So when you are sure that you are on the right path, you won't change your opinion. And obviously life could totally change your opinion. You might learn something. And at that point, it's the most masculine thing to do is basically to change your opinion and say I was wrong. By all means, I don't think I was wrong, trying to live more authentically. And, I'm sure this is getting a lot deeper than I wanted it to, since I'm sort of diving deep into something that's recently happened in my life. But the point is, people will criticize and people will say a lot of shit, hurtful shit, mean shit, and you'll have to hear it from probably the closest people to you. It's just the reality. If it were friends that sort of had said these things to me, I would never talk to them again. I would block them outright, never see their faces. But sometimes it's people that you can't block, like parents, like people who are really close to you. And at that point, you really can't do much besides just take in the punches. It is going to be difficult having to go through a situation like this, and perhaps you are going through a situation like this. To have to push through even when your closest people are stabbing you. So that's the price that one has to pay when you start self-improvement. You are defying a society that is stagnant, a society that does not want to improve, a society that rewards envy and people wanting to pull down successful people. That's the kind of society we live in, unfortunately. And you're just going to have to push through. We all have goals and aspirations and purpose and a dream and a mission. And we must fulfill that mission because we know that is the better thing, the best thing for humanity. That is our goal and the reason we were put on this earth. A chosen one kind of mindset. And it sounds kind of, like cliche and weird when you sort of say it, but that's just the reality of it. We all have a reason here. We're in a closed system, and it's obvious we were put here with purpose. There was a reason we were put here. Each individual one of us was created. We have a purpose for each person. So find the change that you must make to the world and pursue it. Make sure it is done to the fullest. And this kind of society that we live in will always try and make you change because society is a feminine mindset. Society is feminine. It wants to change you. It wants to shift you, to make you blend in, to make you be like everyone else. But you can't be like everyone else. Everyone who's trying so hard to fit in is not fitting in, even when they look they are. So what's the point of trying to blend into a society where we all know that each has their own unique traits and unique purpose? In a society that's obviously designed just to make profit for the ones at the top and not for us. So we really need to just buy ourselves time, and with sort of buying ourselves time to be able to actually pursue our dreams and achieve them, we can start to see it through and actually achieve it. The main thing about our main self-improvement mindset is we're not the type of people who quit. When we sort of put our mind onto something, when I have a goal, when you have a goal, when we have a purpose, when we have something that we must see through because we know it is a godly mission, we will see it through. No matter who stands in the way, we must keep going. Even when we're freaking tired, depressed, going through the worst time of our fucking life, we must see it through. That is how you end up achieving a purpose. So obviously this got a little deep, but this is the sort of thing I wanted to highlight for today's video. Obviously, there are certain things I didn't really go into detail with because I don't really want to go deep into my own personal life. But perhaps I shouldn't have talked about, living authentically when I wasn't already living authentically. I was sort of just doing it and trying to maximize it when, I sort of didn't know that a situation like that could even happen, that I would sort of be limited so harshly by society. So that's really the main freaking deal. Obviously, we can try and aspire to live as authentically as we can. And that's the way we do everything on self improvement. We want to make sure everything is optimized to be in our own favor, to push our lives forward. Once we're at the top, we can do everything, right? But till we get to that point, we have to somewhat comply by little stupid shit about society, about the world, about perhaps trying to fit into the matrix, even when we know that the matrix is wrong. So that's really the main freaking deal. Obviously, if you're going through something similar to this, it is a really freaking difficult situation, and I totally get that. I obviously have coaching calls if you're interested to sort of talk this out with me and get my personal one-to-one help. So you could check that out on Instagram, DM me coaching. You'll find that there's a highlight about everything if you want to just learn more about it. And obviously, if you want to sort of have a cheaper sort of, just a bunch of courses and, a little bit of help on posts, because it's sort of, it's not a call, but it's still probably just as valuable, if not even more. You could check out the Thrive Academy. You could obviously get yourself a free trial, since I started free trials just today. So you could obviously just try it, see all the courses. If you manage to finish them in 7 days, real cool, you don't have to join, and, all that kind of shit. So, check out Thrive Academy if you're interested to learn more about just general self-improvement. And you can obviously get one-to-one help through coaching calls or through Thrive Academy, since there aren't much people now in Thrive Academy. So I'll probably have a lot of focus on the few people who are there. So that's really all there is to it for this video. And as long as you commit to the work, you'll be getting your results.